So, here in America, as kids, we are sold on the idea of the separation of church and state, but clearly that's not a thing, particularly in Oklahoma. Did you know that in Tulsa, they start out the Wednesday city council meetings with an invocational prayer? Now, this invocational prayer can be of any faith. However, conservatives are no longer happy about that. Let's talk about it. Near the end of November, Krista Patrick invited a pagan priestess, Amy McAdams, to perform the invocational prayer for the start of her last city council meeting. Public Radio Tulsa reports that she wanted to share one little part of herself before she left office. Now, if you look at the Tulsa City Council Rules and Order of Business, Section XX, the prayer should be cognizant of many faiths in the community and shall not be used as an opportunity to proselytize or advance or disparage any faith or belief or the particular tenets or beliefs of individual faiths. The prayer leader may use the specific name of their God within the prayer as long as it is not used in a manner to proselytize or advance or to disparage any faith or belief or the particular tenets or beliefs of individual faiths. The council extends an invitation to all recognized congregations within the city of Tulsa to sponsor their pastor, minister, rabbi, imam, or other faith leader to provide the invocational prayer for the city council. Amy McAdams' invocational prayer was beautiful. It centered around Medusa, the Gorgonia champion of equality and sacred rage, monstrous hero of the oppressed and abused. Amy McAdams asked for Medusa to guide the city councilors as they represent and support all people of District 3 within the city of Tulsa. However, like I said, conservatives are very clearly and very obviously not happy about this. Superintendent Ryan Walters shared in a tweet that satanic prayers are welcome in hell, but not in Oklahoma. Satanism is not a religion. Tulsa should immediately move to ensure this never happens again, and the person who allowed it should be held accountable. Governor Kevin Stitt shared that Satan was trying to establish a foothold through McAdams' prayer, saying that Oklahoma is going to be a shining city on the hill, quoting the Bible. He went on to say that Tulsa City Council needs to stand strong against actions like this, and Tulsans need to remember who allowed this at the ballot box. Following the meeting, current city councilor Laura Bellis shared that she wants to change the rules to only have a moment of silence and not an invocation. Meanwhile, another very conservative city councilor, Jamie Fowler, said that Tulsans should observe the Constitution by respecting all faiths and religions. Now, this isn't the first Christian nation news that Oklahoma has had recently. Just under 2 weeks prior to Krista Patrick's last city council meeting, Governor Stitt unveiled the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives.
More details on this, Hunter.
Austin and Jolene, state leaders say it's a way to connect Oklahomans with faith-based groups and other nonprofits that can help with mental health, food security, foster care, and more. We're also told it's open to all religions.
While the emphasis on the non-discriminatory aspect of this initiative may feel alluring to some, I want you to think back to how they are referring to church and state working together rather than the two entities existing separately. About 5 months earlier, Superintendent Ryan Walters made headlines for using $3 million of the Oklahoma State Department of Education's budget for not just any Bibles, but Trump's Bibles, to be in every school, every classroom, all over Oklahoma.
It's crystal clear to us that in the Oklahoma academic standards, under Title 70, multiple occasions, the Bible is a necessary historical document to teach our kids about the history of this country, to have a complete understanding of Western civilization, to have an understanding of the basis of our legal system, and is frankly, when we're talking about the Bible, one of the most foundational documents used for the Constitution and the birth of our country. We also find major points in history that refer to the Bible, that reference the Bible. We see multiple figures, whether we're talking about the Federalist Papers, constitutional conventional arguments, and Martin Luther King Jr., who use it as a tremendous impetus for the civil rights movement, and tie many of those arguments back to the Bible. It is essential that our kids have an understanding of the Bible and its historical context. So we will be issuing a memo today that every school district will adhere to, which is that every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom to ensure that this historical understanding is there for every student in the state of Oklahoma in accordance with our academic standards and state law.
The move comes from a recommendation from the Oklahoma Advisory Council on Founding Principles, a group of evangelical pastors who came together alongside Superintendent Ryan Walters in early 2023. Walters said he put together the committee because of a letter he received from religious and community leaders. Additionally, and notably so, one of the 6 evangelical pastors of the group represents organizations founded on Christian nationalism. In the letter sent, they requested that Walters take a deep look at prayer in school and the role of faith in K-12 schools. According to a report by the Oklahoman in mid-2023, the Oklahoma Advisory Council on Founding Principles finalized a list of goals in March of 2023, which included having all students learn of their accountability to the Creator and that classroom prayer will lead to better educational outcomes in Oklahoma. The group listed its top priority as having one of the legal challenges to its efforts reach the United States Supreme Court, where they plan to overturn what they view as the ill-advised and unconstitutional 1962 Engel versus Vital decision, a reference to the court's ruling that school-sponsored prayer violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Before we fall too deep into the rabbit hole of Oklahoma's Christian-based political agendas, let's try to understand Christian nationalism so that we can understand what we're dealing with and thus do our best to address it personally and communally. According to Christianity Today, Christian nationalism is the belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way. Christian nationalists assert that America is and must remain a Christian nation. Keep in mind, the Christian in Christian nationalism is more about identity than religion. Jesus' teachings are about divine, all-encompassing love, with the kingdom of God being a spiritual, metaphysical place, not of this world. Christian nationalism, by contrast, is an ideology focused primarily on the identity of our nation, painting America as the new Israel, carrying with it assumptions about nativism, white supremacy, authoritarianism, patriarchy, and militarism. This is the ignorant headspace Superintendent Walters is speaking from when he says,
You're not going to find the separation of church and state in the Constitution. It's not there. You're not going to see the founders describe religion in this way.
Throughout all these initiatives, we see state officials dancing the line of what is and what is not legally considered proselytizing, a word mentioned earlier in Section XX of the Tulsa City Council Rules and Regulations. According to Merriam-Webster, to proselytize is to induce someone to convert to one's faith and/or to recruit someone to join one's party, institution, or cause. While the separation of church and state is widely considered to be a fundamental right in America, proselytization is a fundamental aspect of Western Christianity. It's the origin of the religion's separation from ancient Jewish tradition. Starting in about 60 CE, over 30 years across 10,000 miles, St. Paul preached in some of the Roman Empire's most important cities. Like Jesus, Paul spoke to people in their homes and synagogues, but he went beyond Jesus, who only preached to Jews. Paul believed that Jesus' message should be taken to the Gentiles, the non-Jews. As the Christian movement began to accept non-Jewish members, it moved further away from the strict rules imposed on Jews. In doing so, it gradually became a new and separate religion. This was also due to how early Christians felt the need to organize in order to unify their beliefs due to the numerous persecutions directed by multiple Roman emperors. Fast forward to 313 CE, the Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which accepted Christianity. 10 years later, it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. With the favor of various emperors and a new freedom from persecution, Christian leaders would quickly adapt Christianity to contemporary Roman cultural norms while capitalizing on the religion's newfound ability to openly compete with alternative faiths. This included, but was not limited to, a shift in the religion's focus from symbolic acts to ritual acts, a reinterpretation of the love feasts into the Eucharist as the central ritual act of Christianity, and the introduction of a hierarchical leadership structure. In 330 CE, Emperor Constantine moved the Eastern Roman capital to Byzantium, later named Constantinople, for multiple reasons. The eastern part of the Roman Empire was becoming more important, and he wanted a capital that was closer to the center. Also, the area allowed for easy access to vast territories via nearby bodies of water. The city of Rome was also seen as being corrupt. While the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 CE, the Eastern Roman Empire, later called the Byzantine Empire, survived and thrived. This is the famed fall of the Roman Empire, at which point the Pope gained power, becoming the sole authority in what was left of Rome, aka the Byzantine Empire. The Pope stayed in this position until 751 CE, when the Byzantine Empire was invaded by the Lombards and there were some updates to his responsibilities. In 756 CE, Pepin the Short granted the Pope power over regions near Rome, giving rise to the Papal States. Popes began to rule over a large portion of the Italian peninsula. In a little over 400 years, Christianity transformed from just a communal set of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices to a powerful, dominating institution. From 756 CE onwards, the Church would grow substantially across Western Europe in cultural, societal, and institutional power. The Pope would rule over these Papal States until the French Revolution of 1848, when they were annexed into Italy by 1870. But before we get into the 19th and 20th centuries, there's some more geologically Western history we need to discuss. In the 15th century, the Church released the doctrine of discovery, a series of papal decrees in response to the European Catholic nations' ambitions to explore and colonize other regions. Through this series of edicts known as papal bulls, popes gave those nations the right to take control of other lands, subdue the people who already lived there, and convert them to Christianity. One decree worth mentioning is the Inter Caetera, a papal bull issued by Pope Alexander VI in 1493. A year earlier, in 1492, explorer Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and arrived in the Americas on an expedition funded by the Spanish monarchy. Though the purpose of the journey was to find a western route to Asian trading centers, it also presented an opportunity for Spain to expand both its kingdom and Christianity's reach. The purpose of this papal bull was to address and amend established framework of papal grants in lands that at the time of their discovery were not ruled by a Christian prince, in order to avoid confrontation with Portugal while expanding Spain's as well as Christianity's territorial sovereignty. The Pope's reasoning for this doctrine of discovery drew in part on the emerging concept of terra nullius, Latin for empty land. Any place not already occupied by Christians was considered free for the taking by Christian Europeans, regardless of how many people already lived there or the advancement of their civilizations. This was all a part of the historically notorious Age of Exploration, sometimes called the Age of Discovery, which lasted through the 17th century. This period is characterized as a time when Europeans began exploring areas such as Africa and the Americas by sea in search of new trade routes, wealth, and knowledge. As I'm sure you're aware, the colonizers accrued massive wealth as they hellishly screwed over the indigenous peoples of the areas. The impact of the Age of Exploration would permanently alter civilizations everywhere, transforming the world into what it is today. This brings up the point of how much what was historically and institutionally property of the Church has influenced the progress of society through globalization. The Roman Catholic Church's application of the concept of empty land is essentially how European colonialists justified everything that occurred in the European takeover of the Western Hemisphere through the annihilation of indigenous peoples, cultures, practices, and lands. The aggressive waters of colonialism's patriarchal waves of ignorant, greedy, inhumane domination of the world are still very obviously globally rippling out to this day. As the founding fathers of this so-called country declared Turtle Island their own, the First Amendments were written. According to the First Amendment, Americans' religious freedoms are protected through the right to religious belief and expression, and the guarantee that the government neither prefers religion over non-religion, nor favors particular faiths over others. As the ACLU puts it, these dual protections are supposed to work hand in hand, allowing religious liberty to thrive and safeguarding safeguarding both religion and government from the influence of the other. An issue arises, however, with certain sects of Christianity, such as evangelicalism, in which a core part of one's religious beliefs are proselytization in hopes of conversion of others to save as many souls as possible, bringing up the questions: what happens when a core aspect of someone's religious beliefs and expressions are proselytization? And what happens when those people wish to go for a position as a government official? This is the contradiction making itself known as believers of certain sects of Christianity, as well as Christian nationalists, scream for their right to regulate and oppress others as their right to religious freedom. Furthermore, Christian nationalism is a contributing ideology in the religious right's misuse of religious liberty as a rationale for collective and societal upheaval, as well as the circumventing of laws and regulations aimed at protecting people's basic human rights. Amanda Tyler, the executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty, distinctly put that the most violent expressions, such as what we saw at the January 6th insurrection, get the most attention. But the more subtle ones, like state legislative efforts to promote the teaching of the Bible in public schools or to require the posting of "In God We Trust" in public schools and other public places, are also dangerous in that they can perpetuate the false narrative that to be a true American, one must be Christian, and often a certain type of Christian. Christian nationalism places not just Americans' First Amendment rights at risk, but countless other human rights and the Jenga tower of this occupational republic's widely considered core foundation of democracy. Considering how conservative Trump's regime will be in all branches of the United States federal government in the coming years, the threat of Christian nationalism should not be downplayed. And like Amanda Tyler pointed out, change starts locally and expands outward from there. This piece of truth is not befallen on American society. Since Trump's recent presidential election win, I've seen the words organizing and community become buzzwords. To quote the book Radical Regeneration, Sacred Activism, and the Renewal of the World, this historic increase in activism is refreshing, moving, and inspiring, but it needs a structure and strategy so it can sink its roots into the soil of resistance. We must demand systemic change rather than resigning ourselves to single-issue protests. In order to liberate ourselves from the old world, we must collectively create a new one. And in order to create a new world, we cannot base it from the colonial ways of the old world, which requires us to decolonize our understanding of ourselves, our spiritual practices, our community, our society, history, and the world, which, can seem overwhelming. However, given how deeply interconnected all the current geopolitical issues are due to colonial capitalism, decolonization is a journey we all must go on individually and collectively. The revolution will not be televised a la Gil Scott-Heron does not mean we will not witness it or experience it. It means it starts internally, it starts with you, and it doesn't start until then. As I reflect on the ways that Western colonial Christianity has influenced society as well as my definition of that and thus my place within it, I want to open up the floor to you and ask your thoughts and feelings on anything shared today, and thank you for watching. In part 2, we're going to dive into not just the topic of institutional property according to Christianity, but the demonization of women. As a polymath, I offer a variety of services from spiritual guidance to music and media. If you'd like to book with me, check out the link in my bio for my website as well as some easy action items. Got a video suggestion? Let me know down below. As always, I love you, I'm here for you, and we got this.